protest.
Well, yeah, but they're both violent. They both set fire to things. They both threaten property. They both threaten law and order. And so I mean, look, I tell you something. The perception of two-tier policing is very, very dangerous.
You don't think that's going to come your way?
What, for asking the truth about the perpetrator of a heinous crime?
For suggesting that the police are lying without any evidence?
I didn't say they lied. You've done that. That's the third time you've done that, and you are irresponsible.
At the moment, the public continues to discuss the terrible incident in Southport with bitterness and indignation. It seems that the government is ready to do anything to hide the truth about that day and about the criminal. Farage shocked everyone with his bold statements in an interview, and the presenter, unable to contain his emotions, simply froze, trying to interrupt him. We're starting to watch.
Held from us.
We have a situation in this country, right, where ever since Black Lives Matter, there is increasing distrust of the police in this sense. The idea that there's two-tier policing is now widespread in society. That is something that very urgently needs to be dealt with.
I'm going to ask you about that.
Very urgently.
But I just have to issue this clarification, because you have said in the course of the conversation something that could be sub judice, and we just need to be very careful about the charge that has been laid against this person. I think that he's been described in the course of it. So we pause there to be very careful about what we're going to say about an open case. What is two-tier policing?
Two-tier policing is you deal with different types of protests and different types of crime.
Our country has a two-tier police system based on racial characteristics. The police ruthlessly arrest the British, while the migrants remain unnoticed as if invisible. Only 37% of Britons believe that the police are really fulfilling their duties. More than half of the population are tormented by doubts about their ability to solve crimes. These alarming figures probably reflect a sad reality: worsening crime detection, overcrowded prisons, and the UK lagging behind other countries in the judicial system. Distrust of the police became even deeper after the tragic death of Sarah Everard, who was killed by a police officer who turned out to be a serial offender. Bullying of some officers, discrimination against female officers, and insults against arrested women reign inside the police.
That in Hare Hills in Leeds, police ran away and allowed a riot. Is that two-tier policing?
I think if you look at the way the police dealt with the Hare Hills protests and dealt with the Southport protests, I think any fair-minded person would think there were two different police reactions. Now, I mean, let me be clear.
But aren't they because two different incidents? They're two different types of protests.
Well, yeah, but they're both violent. They both set fire to things. They both threaten property. They both threaten law and order. And so I mean, look, I tell you something. The perception of two-tier policing is very, very dangerous indeed. And by the way, we've got a situation now with violent riots going on. By far the worst we've seen since 2011, but actually, I think 2011 was a mass outbreak of criminality, opportunistic criminality.
Violent riots broke out across the UK, during which police used brute force and tear gas to disperse protesters and engaged in violent clashes with people overcome with rage. In Liverpool, activists threw bricks and scooters towards police officers, which could lead to open acts of violence. Starmer, instead of looking for ways to peace, promised full support to the police in their fight against so-called extremists and tried to intimidate the protesters, which only worsened the situation. These riots that engulfed the cities were the result of the spread of fake information on the internet about the identity of the teenager, which fueled public discontent and led to chaos.
I personally believe that we police different communities according to their racial backgrounds in different ways, and I want it to end.
And the examples of that are?
The examples of that are, for the third time...
The Black Lives Matter protest?
For the third time, the way that stop and search is implemented, or, frankly, not implemented.
There are people being arrested, obviously, for what they did in protesting on the streets. There are people being arrested for whipping up racial hatred online, for encouraging violence online. Do you worry that based on what you've said in the last few days, you might get a knock on the door from the police?
No.
You don't think that's going to come your way?
What, for asking the truth about the perpetrator of a heinous crime?
For suggesting that the police are lying without any evidence?
I didn't say they lied. You've done that. That's the third time you've done that, and you are irresponsible and wrong to do so.
You are irresponsible.
The police have been given unlimited powers over the protesters. Take, for example, the absurd situation in London when the police arrested 3 people who had devices with them to sound an alarm in case of a threat to life. The police claimed that these people acted on some kind of secret order, intending to use the alarm to scare the horses and bring chaos to the coronation procession. But in fact, those arrested were volunteers of the organization Night Stars, created to protect women. These safety devices were subsidized by the Ministry of the Interior. However, the police did not show any understanding and arrested them, only releasing them on bail after 14 hours. What right did the police have to arrest their own partners who were trying to help society? If they were really worried about the possibility of criminal use of these devices, why not just confiscate them instead of making demonstrative detentions?
For that is?
Well, I think Black Lives Matter, the way that was policed, is very interesting. I mean, people tearing down statues and chucking them in the dock with police just standing by and watching. And I think if you contrast the policing...
Those people were arrested.
Yes, and never even got a criminal charge, unbelievably.
Because the jury
just extraordinarily.
But that's what the jury is there for, isn't it? It's not police.
The police made no attempt to stop that from happening. We even saw Winston Churchill's statue being defaced. We saw the cenotaph being abused. All of those things happened with the police literally just watching.
These statues were not really under police protection, because law enforcement agencies decided that the safety of people was more important than the safety of material objects. More than 130 police officers were injured as a result of the protests caused by the horrific death of George Floyd. The police have been heavily criticized for their failure to prevent the demolition of the Colston statue in Bristol. The death of George Floyd at the hands of the police caused a powerful wave of protests around the world, once again bringing the problem of systemic racism into the focus of public attention. The Topple the Racist website has published a list of 78 statues and monuments that glorify slavery and racism. As a result, the workers demolished the statue of the slave trader. The head of Cardiff City Council supported the decision to demolish the statue of Sir Thomas Picton, who was not only a slave owner but also a military commander, and called this monument an insult to black people.
And when they're shouting, free Gaza and genocide, I think it's a fair bet to say who they are. Here's my real big point, okay? We can quell the riots, the police can do whatever they need to do, we can bring the army in, we can do whatever. Unless we solve what's really at the heart of this problem, our danger is we become like France, where these things don't go away, they flare up every 3 months, 6 months, every year. There are, right at the heart of this, some very, very fundamental concerns about societal breakdown in our country. And there is no doubt that we have to address issues like uncontrolled mass immigration and division of our communities.
What
I'm looking for is a long-term solution, not just a short-term.
France has plunged into a real disaster in the field of migration policy. The authorities are facing unbearable security problems because the crime rate is off the scale. In Germany, the situation is at least a little better, but it can be safely called a real tragedy.
I don't know what any of that has got to do with Southport.
Don't you?
I don't. No, because the man
charged
was born in Cardiff.
Do you know what? You want to get out more. You want to get out more. You want to get out more.
The man charged was born in Cardiff.
Well, why didn't they tell people that? And then maybe the riots would not have been that bad.
But you jumped to conclusions,
They did not
Nigel.
tell people.
You jumped to conclusions based on having looked at Andrew Tate's Twitter feed or whatever.
They did not tell people before those riots sparked who he was and where he came from. And if they'd done that, this would have been far less serious.
But do you think you could have said in those circumstances, we don't know yet who this person is, so let's not jump to conclusions, let's wait and see and condemn how awful the attack was.
Or I could have
said,
tell us the truth and maybe this will calm down, which is what I did.
The people rioting, some of them look to you. They see you as someone who espouses their worldview, their politics. Would you speak to them directly now to tell them to...
Conspiracy theories, which began to gain popularity after the horrific crime in Southport, arose against the background of complete silence and lack of information from the government. We are experiencing a real crisis of confidence in the police, healthcare, parliament, and the government. People start to believe in these theories because they feel vulnerable and left to fend for themselves. While the authorities denied hiding any information from the citizens, the police confirmed that their officers evaluated new evidence as it became available and followed the instructions of the keep.
Stop.
As I've done repeatedly over the last week, there is the reason that we fight, and I've fought for 30 years in European elections, by-elections, general elections, is I believe that parliamentary democracy is the way we stop violence overtaking our society. So I condemn all acts of political violence, whoever they're committed by. And let me tell you, the idea that, devotees of some of these extreme figures are fans of mine is a long way from the truth.
The Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, was on LBC the other day, and she was asked about the responsibility that politicians have in these moments. She says, we have a responsibility to hold the community together and say, let's get the facts, and then let's look at what the actual solutions are and what we can do about the horrific situation that we find ourselves in, not to stir up this fake news online.
In recent years, we have witnessed appalling police brutality towards citizens. The complete indifference of the authorities to the behavior of police officers has become one of the main reasons why we can no longer trust law enforcement agencies. If in 2020 70% of Britons looked at the work of the police with hope, by 2024, the number of dissatisfied people had more than doubled, reaching a shocking 37%. The report showed that over the past 3 years, police have failed to solve a single burglary in almost half of all areas of England and Wales. This is not just a failure, it is a blow to our security and confidence in the future. We reasonably distrust the police.
In the wake of the horrific murder of those 3 girls in Southport in July of this year, I asked some questions saying, please tell us the truth. Stop the online speculation. Well, it's taken a long time to find out more about the individual. He's now been charged, believe it or not, under the Biological Weapons Act because the police have found ricin in his home. He's been charged under the Terrorism Act, alleged to have downloaded Al-Qaeda terrorist materials. But the murder of the girls and the serious injury of the others, that is still being treated as a non-terror incident because they don't know what the motives were. We've also been told this afternoon there are other facts that we don't yet know because the Crown Prosecution Service say they will come out in good time in court and are not to be discussed now. So that's all right then. That all makes sense to you, doesn't it?
The suspect has been charged with new charges. The biological weapon ricin was found in his house, as well as a textbook on radical Islam. Ricin can be used to infect people through air, food or water, and is most often used by terrorist groups. A representative of the Health Safety Agency assures that the ricin found does not pose a threat. But why did we only find out about it now? Any concealment of information undermines trust in the government and creates an atmosphere of fear and distrust. Starmer must urgently go out to the people and explain what he knew about the attack in Southport and when exactly it happened. Please write your opinion about this video in the comments. See you.